In this video, we're going to start talking about compound interest. And previously we talked about simple interest, which was when we talked about the interest is equal to the principal times the rate times the time. And we also talked about it in terms of the circle, where we had interest on the top, then principal, then rate, and time. Now, simple interest is earned on the principal only, where compound interest is earned based on principal plus whatever interest has accumulated in the account. So in this table, we're going to use an example and do a side-by-side comparison so that you can see the difference between simple interest and compound interest. In the left-hand column of the table, we're going to do simple interest. And in the right-hand column, we're going to do compound interest. Now, we're going to assume that the principal is $80 and the interest rate is 8% annual, and we're doing this for 4 years. So each block is going to represent 1 year. So for simple interest, in this column, we're going to start by calculating the interest. So to find the simple interest, I'm going to take the principal times the rate, remembering to put it in decimal form. This is going to be for the first year. When we multiply that together, we're going to get $6.40. So this is the interest earned over the first year. Now, if I want to see the total amount that's in the account, I would take the principal plus the interest, and I would get $86.40. So this would be the total amount in the account. Now for compound interest, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to find the interest for 8% over 1 year. And we're starting with the balance of 80 again. We're going to do this with the same problem side by side so we can compare. So we have a principal of 80, then we're going to find the interest for 1 year. And because it's the first year, we're going to get the same results. We're not going to start seeing differences until the second year. So the interest is going to be $6.40. And then when I add in what I already have in the account, which is $80, I'm going to get $86.40. So in both accounts, at the end of the first year, we're going to have $86.40. Now in the second year is when we're going to start noticing the difference. For simple interest, the interest is earned on the principal only. So for the second year, I would take 80 times 0.08 times 1 year is equal to $6.40. So this is the interest earned over the second year. And then I would take my previous balance, which is $86.40, and add the $6.40 of interest for the second year, and I would get $92.50. So this would be my balance over the second year for the account with the simple interest. Now with compound interest, the interest is earned based on the entire previous balance that includes the principal plus the interest. So when I calculate the interest, I'm going to use my previous balance, not just the principal. So I'm going to take my previous balance, which is $86.40, multiply it by 0.8, and we're doing this for 1 year. When I do that, I get $6.91. So this is where we see the difference. My interest is different in the second year because with the compound interest, I'm using the accumulated value, where the simple interest is the interest is based on the principal only. So then to get my total balance for the compound account, I would take my previous balance, which is $86.40, and I would add the $6.91, and I would get a total of $93.31. So this is my balance after the second year in my compound interest account versus my balance of $92.50 in the simple interest account. Okay, for the next year, year number 3, again, for the simple interest account, interest is earned only on the principal. So for another year, for the third year, I'm just going to multiply 80 times 0.08 times 1 to get 640. And then when I add that to my previous balance, I'm going to get $99.20. Now with the compound interest, I take the entire previous balance, not just the principal. So it includes the principal plus the interest earned, which is the $93.31. I multiply by 0.08 and times 1 for the 1 year. And I'm going to get $7.46. And then define my accumulated balance at the end of the third year. I'm going to take my previous balance, which is $93.31, plus my $7.46 in interest, which would give me $100.77. Okay, the last year for the simple interest, the interest is based on the principal only. So my interest is going to be $640 again. So I'm going to take my previous balance of $99.20. I'm going to add my $640, and that's going to give me $105.60. Now for the compound interest, I'm going to take my previous balance, which is $100.77, and multiply it by 0.08 times 1. And my interest for the fourth year would be $8.06. So then I'm going to add that to my previous balance. And my total balance at the end of 4 years is going to be $108.83. You can see that there's a difference. Now, as the money starts to get bigger, or as the amount of money starts to increase, the amount of interest you earn starts to increase as well for the compound interest. So it's going to start accumulating faster and faster and faster. Where with the simple interest, you're just going to keep adding $6.40 every year. Okay, now I want to show you an easier way to calculate compound interest. If I asked you to do what we just did in the previous table for, say, 20 years, that would be kind of a pain in the butt to figure that out and do that 20 times. So there's an easier way to do it, although you can work it out by hand 20 times. There's some tables in your student handbook that you can use to do it with one calculation very quickly. So in order to use the tables, there's some things you need to know, so let's get started with that. If something is compounded annually, that means 1 time per year. If something is compounded semi-annually, that means 2 times a year. The example that we just did above in the tables, we did once a year. If we compounded the account twice a year, that means halfway through the year, we would collect the interest and then recalculate the next period's interest. So for quarterly, that means 4 times a year. Monthly means 12 times a year. And daily means 365 times a year. We're not going to worry about leap year when we do daily. Okay, so here's an example using the tables. Instead of doing what we did in the previous example where we did it by hand 4 times, what we're going to do is now we're going to do that same example, but we're going to do it with the tables. Now, in order to use the tables, there's some things you need to know. You need to know the rate per period, because this is how we're going to look it up on the table. And you need to know the number of periods. So when the interest rate is given, that is considered over the whole year. So if you're compounding something more than once a year, that interest rate gets split up over those periods. So for example, if I said you had 12% annual interest rate, but you're compounding it 4 times a year, you would take that 12% and divide it by 4. So each period would be 3%. Okay, so in this example where we talked about depositing $80 and doing it for 4 years, compounded annually, so that means once a year for 8 years. And we're going to figure out what the compound amount is and what the interest is. So the rate per period, in this case, is going to be 8%. Since it's done annually, that means once a year. So that 8% doesn't have to be divided. That's done at the end of the year, 8%. And since we're doing this for 4 years, once a year, we're going to have 4 compound periods. This is because it's once a year for 4 years. So you're going to get out your student handbook and you're going to look up in your tables. We're going to use table 12.1 for compound amount. Which is also sometimes called future value. So you're going to scroll through the pages of your student handbook and you're going to find the page that has an 8%, which is going to be your rate per period. You're going to look at the page that has up in the right-hand corner 8%, and then you're going to scroll down in the first column that says Table 12.1 and look for the number of periods that says 4. And you're going to find that the table value should say 1.3605. Once you get that table value, you're just going to take your principal times your table value. So that's going to be $80 times 1.3605. And that's going to give you 108.84. Now, if we scroll back up, you'll see that this is what we got here. It's a penny off because of rounding, but we'll get the same value as if we did it by hand versus just doing it in one calculation. Okay, so to sum up, when you're using the tables to find compound value, you need to find the rate per period. You need to find the number of periods, and then you're going to look it up in your table. And then you're going to take the principal times that table value, and it will give you your compound amount. Now, we started with $80. We ended up at the end of the 4 years with our accumulated balance of 108.84, which means if we were trying to figure out the interest, whatever extra money that's in there will be the amount of the interest that we earned. So if we just take the $108.84 and subtract the $80, that will give us the interest, which would be $24.84. Now let's do some more examples to practice this. It says find the interest on $6,000 at 10% compounded semi-annually for 5 years. So the two things that we absolutely have to know is the rate per period, and we need to know the number of periods. And this is how we're going to look it up on our table. Okay, since this is 10% over the entire year, but we're compounding it twice a year because it says semi-annually. That means we're splitting up that 10% into 2 periods. So that 10% is going to be split up into 2 chunks. So the rate per period is going to be 5%. And I'll put in parentheses here, it's because it's 10% split into 2 periods per year. Right? And that's what semi-annually means. Every year is compounded twice. So that 10% is going to get divided into 2. So every period is going to be, we're going to use 5% to calculate the interest. Now the number of periods means over the entire term that we have the money in the account, how many periods are there? So if we're doing this, if we're compounding this twice a year for 5 years, that means there's going to be 10 periods. And this is because it's twice a year for 5 years. Okay, so we're going to get out the student handbook and we're going to look up in the right-hand corner of the page for the page that says 5%. So scroll through your handbook and find the page that says 5% up in the right-hand corner. And then we're going to be using the table that says 12.1, which is the first column, and we're going to scroll down and look at the number of periods for 10. When we find that table factor, or table value, it should say 1.6289. So this is what we're going to use to multiply by our principal. So I'm going to take 6,000, which is our principal, times 1.6289. When I multiply that, I'm going to get $9,773.40. So this represents our accumulated balance. Now, if we want to figure out how much interest was earned, we got to figure out the difference in what our accumulated balance is and what we initially put in the bank. So that's the difference between the accumulated balance and the principal. So the interest is going to be what I get when I take 9,773.40 minus 6,000. And when I subtract that, I'm going to get $3,773.40. So this represents the interest. Okay, next example says Pam Donahue deposits $8,000 in her savings account that pays 6% interest compounded quarterly. What will the balance of her account be at the end of the 5 years? So we need to find the rate for each period. And we need to find the number of periods. So we can find our table factor. And we're using table 12.1, which is the first column in your handbook. Now, the interest over the entire year is 6%. Since this is compounded 4 times a year, that 6% is going to get divided into 4 periods. So if I take 6 and divide it by 4, I'm going to get 1.5%. So I'm going to make a note here that it's 6% divided by 4 because it's quarterly. Now the number of periods, since this is quarterly, and we're compounding this for 5 years, 4 times a year for 5 years means it's going to be 20 periods. So I'll put in parentheses here. So 4 times a year for 5 years. Okay, so in your student handbook, you're going to find the page that's up in the corner that says 1.5%. Then you're going to scroll down in the first column that says Table 12.1 and look for the number of periods that says 20, and you'll get your table factor. So the table factor you should get is 1.3469. So that means we're going to take the principal, which is 8,000, and we're going to multiply it by the table factor, and we're going to get $10,775.20. So this is the accumulated balance. Now, if I wanted to figure out what the interest was, I would take that accumulated balance and subtract off the principal, and what's left has to be the money that was earned while it was in the account. Okay, in this example, we're going to talk about when something is compounded daily. Now, when it's compounded daily, we have to use a different table in your student handbook. The table is on page 36 of your student handbook, and this is based on 360 days. Okay, so it says calculate the interest and compound amount when $900 is compounded daily for 25 years at 6%. Now, when it's compounded daily and you need to use the daily table, all you need to know is the number of years, and the rate. Okay, so in this case, it's 25 years, and the rate is going to be 6%. So when you look at the table, the daily table in your student handbook, you're going to scroll across the top and look for the percentage or the rate that says 6%. And then you're going to go down the column and look for the number of years, which will say 25. When you do that, you should find that your table value is 4.4811. So what you're going to do is, just like before, you take your principal times your table value, and when you multiply that, you get $4,032.99. So this is for compounding daily. So just remember, when you're looking at these problems, if it says compounded daily, you're going to have to use that separate table, Table 12.2. Okay, the last example I want to go through with you is how to calculate your APY, which is your annual percentage yield. Now, your annual percentage yield is going to be how much percent-wise of the principal that you earned in interest over the first year. We're going to take the interest for the first year, and then we're going to divide that by the principal, because that's our base in this case, what we're comparing it to, and then we're going to multiply it by 100 to change it into percent form. So we're only trying to find the interest for 1 year. So we're going to go through the process like we normally do, but we're just doing it for 1 year. It says the principal is $8,000. The interest rate is 8% and is compounded quarterly. We need to find the rate per period. We need to find the number of periods so that we can find our table factor. Okay, so since it's 8% and it's compounded quarterly, we're going to take 8% and divide it by 4. So our rate per period is 2%. Now, since we're only doing this for 1 year, if we're doing it 4 times a year for 1 year, the number of periods will be 4. So I'll put in parentheses, 4 times a year for 1 year. Now you're going to find the page in your student handbook that in the upper right hand corner it says 2%. Then you're going to scroll down in the first column that says 12.1, and you're going to find the number of periods that is 4. Then when you look at your table, you're going to find that the table factor is going to be 1.0824. So we need to take 8,000, our principal, times 1.0824. And when we do that, we get $8,659.20. So this is our accumulated balance over the first year. So I'll put that in parentheses. I want to stress that when you're trying to find the APY, you're doing it just for the first year. Okay, now to find the interest, we need to take that accumulated balance. Whoops, I think I made a mistake. Let me fix that. 865920. Okay, so we're going to take 8659.20 and we're going to minus 8,000. And that's going to give us interest of $659.20. So this is our interest. So our formula to find the percentage of the principal that we earned over the first year, we take the interest, we divide it by the principal, and then multiply it by 100 to change it into percent form. So my interest is $659.20 divided by the principal, which is 8,000, and then we're going to multiply by 100 to change it in percent form. When we do that, we're going to get 8.24%. So this represents our APY, which is the amount of interest that's earned just in that first year based on the principal, the percentage of the interest earned based on the principal. Now, this should always be a little bit higher than your APR. And your APR is your annual percentage rate, which is the 8%. Now, it's always going to be a little bit higher because when it's compounded more than one time during the year, you get that extra interest built in. So it's going to be a little bit higher.